You know that feeling. You're going about your day, and out of nowhere, that person is in your head again. You replay a conversation from 3 weeks ago. You check your phone, even though you know you didn't hear it buzz. You catch yourself spinning out a whole imaginary future. And then when they actually do text, the rush is so intense, it's almost physical. But when they go quiet, or when you can't tell how they feel about you, the whole thing somehow gets even more intense. Most people call that falling in love, but what if it's not? Today, we're talking about limerence, what it actually is, how it's different from love, how to know if you're in it, and what to do if you are. Whether you're single, partnered, or in a relationship and suddenly consumed by someone who isn't your partner, this episode will give you the language and the clarity you've been missing. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the podcast. You know who I am. And this topic got brought up quite a few times in my Substack community, and I've gotten the question on TikTok and other places. So, what is limerence? Limerence, it's not a new concept. Things start to trend, and all of a sudden we see them everywhere. Limerence isn't new. It's just I think it's been an underused concept. So there was a psychologist named Dorothy Tenov who coined the term after spending a decade, at least 10 years, interviewing hundreds and hundreds of people about their experiences of romantic attraction. And she published her findings in, there was a 1979, a book called Love and Limerence. And what she found was that a significant number of people described something far more consuming, far more destabilizing, and far more painful than what most people mean when they say they're in love. And she named that state limerence. And limerence, the way that she defined it, Tenov just defined it, is an involuntary, obsessive mental state focused on another person. What she called the limerent object, or the LO. Okay, so that's that person that you're so focused on. And here's the thing that distinguishes it from love. It's not driven by who the other person actually is. It's driven by the intoxicating uncertainty of whether they want you back. That's the key. Limerence runs on uncertainty. The moment you know for sure that someone fully reciprocates or definitely doesn't, limerence pretty much dissolves, more or less. It's not a character flaw or something. It's not a sign that something is wrong with you, but understanding it changes really everything about how you interpret what you're feeling. So what does limerence actually feel like? Tenov identified a consistent set of hallmarks across really hundreds of interviews. So, and then there was research later by Wilmot and Bentley, and which confirmed all of Tenov's hypotheses and all that, and they expanded on them. And documenting how limerence plays out across different people's lived experiences. So, and here's what they found. And for the new people, whenever I say the research says, or I talk about a past episode, or the amazing free download for today, which is a little quiz to know if you're being limerent or not, anything you can find below the video on YouTube or on my website, abbymetcalf.com, go to this episode. So I always back up whenever I say research says, I back it up with the actual studies, and you can find those all. If you want to go down the rabbit holes that I go down all the time, I love looking at research, which people, if you've been with me a while, you know I love the research. It just fascinates me. I love reading all about it. Anyway, so here's what they found. Intrusive, involuntary thinking about the person, not just thinking about them, but genuinely being unable to stop. This again, Wilmot and Bentley found that participants described the thoughts as almost continuous. They had one person writing that it feels as if it's 100% of your emotions are riveted to the LO, the limerent object, at all times. So it's pretty major. Another thing they found is intense longing for reciprocation. More than wanting them to like you, you need to know how they feel about you. The uncertainty is unbearable. It's addictive. It's not good. The third thing they found is idealization, which means that you notice everything wonderful about them and minimize or explain away anything that isn't. They become, in your mind, essentially perfect. That's one of the real signs of limerence that I see a lot, because I'm seeing red flags and the other person is not. And so, anyway, another thing they found is emotional highs and lows based entirely on the other person's behavior. You get a warm text from them and you are soaring, and a delayed reply or a cooler than usual interaction sends you off the deep end, ruins your whole day. Another symptom are physical symptoms when you're around them or even just thinking about them. So you might find a racing heart, some shakiness, difficulty concentrating. In one of Tenov's experiments, people had reported things like flush skin, getting a flush, sweaty palms, that kind of thing. Kind of crazy, right? Another symptom is fantasy, mentally rehearsing conversations, imagining future scenarios, playing out what it'd be like if they finally chose you, that kind of thing. Another symptom, which I've kind of referred to, but I'll say it again, is acute sensitivity to signs that they're reciprocating to what. So you're over analyzing everything they say or do for evidence that they feel the same way or that they don't feel the same way. And Wilmot and Bentley also found consistent links between limerence and anxiety and depression, and what they described in their research is like free-floating emotional distress that becomes temporarily fixated on the LO, on the limerent object, on the other person. So in a lot of ways, limerence is anxiety wearing a romantic outfit or costume, really. Yeah. And in 2024, there was like a major kind of a scoping review published in, of all things, the Journal of Police and, what is that called? It's like the Journal of Police and Criminal Psychology. I'll get it right on the website or below the video. And it was a huge study, and they found that limerence shares cognitive features with obsessive compulsive disorder, including intrusive repetitive thinking, compulsive behaviors, like all kinds of stuff. So, and now it doesn't mean you have OCD. It means, what I'm saying is that the brain, and what that research shows is that the brain mechanisms that drive obsessive states and the ones that drive limerence have it way too much in common. That's really it. Okay, so is limerence the same as love? No, it's not. And this is the distinction that matters most. Limerence is about the ache for reciprocation, and love is about the other person. I'm going to say it again. Limerence is just all about, they've got to reciprocate. I have to see and know that they feel the same way I do. Love, that's that anxiety, it's really about the other person. It's a very different feeling. When you love someone, you care about their well-being, their growth, their happiness, even when it doesn't directly affect you. You can see them clearly, including their flaws, their ugly parts, their warts, and you love them anyway. There's comfort, there's steadiness, there's genuine warmth in how you relate. Limerence, at its core, is really self-focused. You're focused on yourself, not in a selfish way, but in a neurochemical way. The limerent experience is primarily about your own internal state. Do they want me? Will they choose me? Did I say something wrong? What did that silence mean? The other person becomes really less of a real human and more of like a symbol for whether you're wanted, whether you're worthy, safe, all that stuff. And I will tell you, when Tenov, God bless Dorothy Tenov, what a badass. When she wrote about this, she was really direct. She was very clear. She says in limerence, the limerent object's actual qualities matter far less than the interpretation of the signals that you're getting. So you're not falling for who they are. You're falling for your own brain's narrative about what their behavior means. Are you picking up what I'm laying down? Are you picking up what Dr. Abby's laying down? So if you want to do like a quick gut check, I would say there's a you would think about the other person you're so consumed by. And when you imagine your future with them, what are you actually imagining? Are you imagining a real relationship with conflict and compromise and ordinary Tuesdays? Or are you mainly imagining the moment they finally choose you? Like kind of, it's like you're imagining you're thinking obsessively about the resolution of the longing itself, like when they declare their love. If it's mostly that, that's a limerence flag, I need to tell you. Okay. So why does limerence, no, how do I want to say this? So why does uncertainty fuel limerence so powerfully? That's what I'm gonna call this section. Why does uncertainty fuel limerence so powerfully? And this is where the neuroscience gets, I think, of course, fascinating, because I love this crap. So Helen Fisher, my girl crush, Helen Fisher, she's a biological anthropologist. If you haven't watched her TED talks yet, or talk or whatever, she's amazing. Anyway, on love and longing and knowing, she's incredible. So Helen Fisher and Arthur Aarons, they did a lot of MRI. It's actually functional MRIs, fMRIs, a lot of research, and they found that intense romantic attraction activates the brain's dopaminergic reward pathways. And specifically the VTA, which is the ventral tegmental area, and what's called the caudate nucleus, which are the same regions associated with motivation, craving, goal-directed behavior. So romantic attraction, it's not just an emotion, it's a drive state. And like all drive states, it's powerfully shaped by intermittent reward, right? Meaning, a reward that you get sometimes, not all the time, like a slot machine. Your brain's dopamine system is wired to respond most intensely, not to guaranteed rewards, okay, but to unpredictable ones. There's been this research goes way back. So when you don't know if, pulling the lever on the slot machine will pay out, dopamine actually fires more intensely than it would if you got a reward every single time. I know that sounds crazy, but it's the truth. That's the neurochemical engine, again, of the slot machine. And it's the same engine running limerence. When someone's interest in you is warm sometimes and cooler at other times, when you can't quite read them, when there are signals but no certainty, your brain treats that ambiguity as a puzzle that needs to be solved. And dopamine floods in every time you think you found a little clue. That's why you're searching everywhere and you're talking to me obsessively, like, Abby, they said this, and then she said this, and then he said this, and then they did this, and then yesterday I said this, but then they said this. Yeah. Now, there's also a serotonin piece here. This woman, I always call her Maserati, and it's not Marziti, Donatella Marziti. How fabulous is that name? Come on, Donatella Marziti. Let's have a moment for that. And her colleagues at the University of Pisa, of course, you figured it would be somewhere in Italy, right? Found that people who had recently fallen in love had serotonin transporter levels that were significantly lower than controls, and statistically indistinguishable from people with OCD. Again, we're getting back to that. So, because low serotonin is associated with intrusive, ruminative thinking. So the obsessive quality of limerence isn't just like all in your head in a dismissive sense. There's a measurable neurochemical shift happening. I'm telling you all this so you truly understand and don't feel so don't beat yourself up quite so much when you're dealing with this, because it's so hard. And this is why limerence often intensifies when a relationship becomes more available. Right? You'd think certainty would be satisfying, right? So the relationship is here more, it's more available, but it's not. But for a nervous system hooked on the chase, clarity can feel deflating. I know. It's also why some people find themselves really intensely kind of limerent for someone unavailable or uninterested, and they feel relatively little for someone warm, attentive, and genuinely interested in them. I know. Sit with that for 1 minute. Is that crazy? The unavailability of the person itself is doing a lot of the work. And again, Tenov, when you read her stuff, she's really clear that uncertainty isn't just a feature of limerence. It's a requirement of it. Without that kind of open question of reciprocation, like do they or don't they, limerence either resolves into real love or fades entirely. You get one or the other. So can you be limerent inside a committed relationship? Yes. And this is where things get, I think things get complicated. Limerence for your own partner is possible, and early in relationships, I would say it's kind of common. The uncertainty of early dating, right, creates perfect limerence conditions. It's like the perfect storm. And as the relationship becomes more committed and more stable, limerence will typically fade and is replaced in healthy relationships by something, quieter, more sustaining, deep attachment, genuine love. But some people experience the limerence fading and they panic and they mistake the loss of the obsessive high for falling out of love. Right? So they may begin to feel limerent towards someone outside the relationship instead, because that person offers the novelty and the uncertainty that their nervous system is craving. So it doesn't automatically mean their committed relationship is wrong. It often means that their nervous system doesn't know yet how to experience safety as love. Are you seeing yourself here? Are you listening to me? I know. And I want to remind you, I do a full blog for every episode. So if this is all really hitting, go back and read the blog later, like take it in differently. It's not a transcript. It's an actual blog that I write up. Anyway, so if you're in a committed relationship and consumed by limerent feelings for someone else, it's worth asking yourself really honestly, am I confused because I found a better match, or am I addicted to the that neurochemical hit that comes from uncertainty? And again, this is where self-sabotage often comes in. You might be sabotaging the relationship, trying to create something, making them jealous or trying to make them jealous, to prove their love or show their love. We do it. We get really caught up. And these are really different problems with different solutions, I do want to say. And I'll get to that, of course. So why are some people more vulnerable to limerence than others? Because some people are more vulnerable than others. And the research, I would say pretty consistently, points to a few factors that play in. Anxious attachment is the strongest predictor. I've talked about attachment a lot on the podcast. I just did a 3-episode arc. I've done other ones too, just kind of explaining the different attachment styles. I'll link to those, but anxious attachment is the strongest predictor. If you grew up in an environment where love and attention were inconsistent, your nervous system learned to be hyper vigilant for signs of acceptance or rejection for either. The ambiguity of early stage attraction, right? That sort of back and forth, or the pull of unavailable partners replicates that dynamic, that familiar dynamic, So the hunger for reciprocation isn't just romantic longing. I want you to think of it, it's like an old unmet need trying to finally get filled. I know. So other researchers, Waken and Vo, they built on Tenov's original model. And some of the stuff they found in their research was that limerence shares, again, they also found that limerence shares functional similarities with obsessive compulsive disorder, but they also found it and substance use disorder, meaning like cocaine addiction. So, the forces like longing for reciprocation, driving forces like obsessive thinking, um, extreme mood fluctuations come from that, all that. I mean, it's like boom, boom, boom. So when separation from your LO, the limerent object occurs, people often experience withdrawal like symptoms. That's what's crazy. Chest or stomach pain, sleep disruption, irritability, depression, high anxiety. I know. It's crazy, right? I mean, really. And and loneliness is another factor. When people have unmet, I do want to say that sorry, I just I'm sorry, I finished that thought, but loneliness is another factor. Sorry, things pop in my head and I start talking. Um, so if you have some sort of unmet social needs or emotional needs, even a small sign of interest from another person really can become sort of dramatically amplified into something that feels like profound connection when it's not. So I do want to say that. Okay. So those two are the biggies: anxious attachment style, and if you're lonely, you know. Um, All right. So, how do you know if what you're feeling is limerence or real love? So, here are the questions worth sitting with, okay? Worth engaging with. Do you love them for who they actually are, including qualities that are ordinary, annoying, or imperfect? Or do you mostly love the idealized version of them in your own mind? You should also be able to state, I talk about trauma bonding, which can also get kind of caught up in here. Um, and I can always tell when someone is sort of trauma bonding because they can't, when I say to them, what do you love about this person? What is it? They can't give me anything really concrete. They give me things like, oh, there's just something about them. And oh, we talk all night. And oh, it's so, they're so charismatic. And oh, there's just this thing we have. It's so special. No. If you ask me right now, what do you love about Gary? I can give you easily. He's really thoughtful. He puts my needs first often. He's generous. He's kind. He's warm. He's really funny. We really laugh well together. He has my back in all things, right? I could go on and on and on easily with a list of very identifiable behaviors, characteristics, not there's just something about him. Okay. Yeah. Another thing I think you can ask yourself is, does your emotional state depend heavily on their responsiveness, or can you stay grounded even when there's silence or distance? That's another thing to look at. When you imagine a future with them, is it a real relationship you're picturing, or mainly the feeling of finally being chosen? Again, are you just picturing that all the time, fantasizing about that time they tell you, you're the one for me, I love you so much? How long have you actually known them, and how deeply do you know them? Limerence doesn't require knowing someone well. Real love does. So, uh, another thing you can ask, if you knew they were completely unavailable, would the intensity drop significantly? That's a strong signal that the uncertainty was doing most of the work, just so you know. Okay. Do you feel genuinely seen and known by them, or mostly just intensely drawn to them? Is another thing. Now, none of these are, I'm not trying to get you. None of these are gotcha. They're tools. I want you to have some honest self reflection, which is the only thing that actually helps here is honest self reflection. So today's free download is a clarity checklist. I'm calling it, am I in limerence or love? It's going to walk you through the key markers of each state so you can see more clearly what's actually driving your feelings. Again, you'll find it below the video on my website under this episode, abbymedcalf.com. Okay. And I have an amazing Therapy to Go bundle for today, which I'll talk about at the very end. The download is free, but if you want, you can also buy something. I call them Therapy to Go bundles. I do them for every episode, and they just help you get much. If this is a real issue for you, and if this has been a pattern for you, you might want to get the bundle. You might need to do kind of some deeper work here than just like a quick quiz. You know what I mean? So, but as always, you don't have to buy anything because I'm going to tell you some things to do here. So, what do you do if you're in limerence? If you're single and limerent for someone, I always say slow down the fantasy. Limerence lives in your head, not in the actual relationship you have with this person. So, the more you can engage with who they actually are, so their real quirks, their limitations, their ordinary humanity, the harder it is for the that sort of idealized projection to survive. So get real. And it doesn't mean you won't still find them wonderful, right? But it brings you back to reality. I would say also consider what the limerence is pointing to. Are you lonely? Are you in a transitional moment in your life? Are you craving the feeling of being chosen? The LO, the limerent object, is often that person is often like a screen, which like you're putting a lot of your unmet needs, you're projecting a lot of your unmet needs on the screen. So getting curious about the need underneath is usually more useful than focusing only on, the person. Okay. Now, if you're in a committed relationship and limerent for someone else, obviously don't act on it, please. That's not the same as pretending the feeling doesn't exist, though. Okay. But don't act on it. It it does exist, and suppressing it without examining it isn't going to help you. So I'm going to say that too. And don't feel guilty and all full of crap, like that's not helping. But acting on limerence while you're in a committed relationship, whether through an affair, by leaving, it's really almost always a decision made from a neurochemical state rather than genuine clarity. Limerence fades. Decisions have consequences. So try to reduce contact with that person, the limerent object, where you can, because limerence needs fuel, and every interaction, every ambiguous moment, every unanswered question, it really feeds it. So limiting contact doesn't it doesn't feel good short term, but it's one of the few things that actually works from the research. Uh, Wilmot and Bentley, who I talked about before, they compared it to the way someone in recovery avoids their substance, right? You don't go into bars if you're trying not to drink, right? Total contact avoidance is really the gold standard, even when it's not fully possible. Just do your best. And also look honestly at your relationship. Sometimes limerence for someone else is your nervous system's way of flagging something in your primary relationship that needs attention. Not necessarily that it's broken, but that there's emotional distance, there's a loss of connection, something unexplored. The limerence may be a distraction from something that deserves your direct attention. So I want you to think of it that way. If you're limerent for someone who's unavailable, I also want to talk about, and this one is painful and I don't want to minimize that, but being deeply consumed by feelings for someone who can't or won't reciprocate, I think is its own kind of grief, and the work here is partly about tolerating that grief directly rather than continuing to feed the fantasy as a way of avoiding it. Okay. It also helps to get honest about what unavailability offers you. For some people, limerence for an unavailable person, it keeps them emotionally occupied in a way that feels safer than real vulnerability with someone who could actually hurt you. So if the people you're most drawn to are consistently out of reach, that pattern is really worth exploring. All right. So what helps limerence resolve? 10 have identified three main ways limerence ends. Okay. So the first is the LO, the limerent object, makes their disinterest unambiguous and final, right? They remove the uncertainty that sustains the whole thing. Okay, so that can happen. The second thing that can happen is the relationship becomes mutual, it becomes committed, becomes stable, and limerence gradually shifts into something hopefully like real love. And then the third is that the limerence transfers to a new person. I've worked with people where this is the case, which doesn't resolve the underlying pattern, obviously, it just restarts it. Okay. So again, what doesn't help is feeding the fantasy, maintaining ambiguous contact, waiting passively for the feeling to pass, not going to help. Okay, what does help is reducing uncertainty in either direction. I would say the biggie is building a rich life, building a life, I guess, rich enough that one person doesn't occupy all your emotional space, addressing the attachment wounds underneath. And if the pattern keeps repeating, I would say, working with a therapist who understands limerence would be really, really good. So let me wrap up and then I'll talk about the Therapy to Go bundle. Limerence is real. It's not a moral failing, nothing to feel guilty about. It's also not proof you found the love of your life. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's a neurochemical and psychological state that millions upon millions of people experience and that almost nobody has a good name for. But, now you do, right? I think having a name for it gives you a choice. You can keep riding the wave of intrusive thoughts and emotional highs and lows, or you can start asking the questions that actually lead somewhere. What do I really need? Is this feeling serving me? What would it mean to want something I could actually have? Okay, so again, today's free download is Am I in Limerence or love? Again, it's short, it's direct, it's a clarity checklist, okay? So, and again, if you're realizing this is a pattern for you, if you keep falling into the same consuming, destabilizing state and you want real tools for working through it, that's the Therapy to Go bundle for this episode. So again, the download is free that I mentioned. But the Therapy to Go bundle is $10. So I do want to say that. Okay. So what's in the bundle? I'm trying to remember right now. Sorry. Okay. So I've got a bunch of things in the bundle. So there's journaling prompts to uncover what's underneath the longing. There's a step-by-step worksheet for working through a limerent thought spiral. There's another, is this limerence or love? But it's more than the free download. It's a more in-depth worksheet for getting honest about what you're actually experiencing. There's also a worksheet. I'm calling it What's This Really About? It's basically, it's a worksheet for helping you identify the unmet need underneath the limerence. There's also a Breaking the Limerence Cycle. It's a personal action plan for really starving the loop and rebuilding your focus. Okay. So all of that plus the free download, by the way, so comes in the Therapy to Go bundle, all of it. So for $10, which is quite the deal when you think about how much therapy is. And if you work with a therapist, it's wonderful also to download the bundle and do it with your therapist. If again, this is an ongoing issue and you haven't quite gotten to what's the problem here, this is a great way to do it. Okay. That's it for today. Thank you so much for being with me. I'm so happy you spent this time. I really appreciate when you write in with questions that I can answer. Sometimes I answer them on my on TikTok or one of the social media accounts. Other times I'll try to answer them here. Just so you know, I never ever can give like advice over the internet. That's not going to happen, like direct advice to you. It's highly unethical. No one should do that. But I can certainly give you some things to think about and some thoughts that I have about the situation in one of those forums. Also remember, if you email me, abby@abbymcf.com with a topic or a suggestion, just a couple sentences, please. I say with love, there's millions of you who download this podcast. I clearly, if I get an email that's a page long, I can't even read it. I don't have time. I'm sorry. So, and I'm not sorry. It just is. That's a boundary, So take that into account. But I certainly want to listen to you, want to hear from you. And that's it. I hope this was really helpful and we will talk real soon.